So welcome everyone to night 2 of IV Therapy Bootcamp, the mini edition, but that does not mean that this is mini information as you all saw last night. So tonight we will get into the legal aspects or the legal foundation. So of course, like any good webinar or any good coach or mentor, I have to say that nothing that I say is don't consider it legal advice or legal advisement or that we have a legal relationship or y'all know the deal or a contract. This is informational only, and it does not mean that everything I say applies to your state. There are 50 states and some territories. Don't quiz me on how many, but everyone is a little bit different. So the best authority as far as when you're actually proceeding with setting up your IV therapy business, you need an attorney in your state. When you have those very specific questions about, the legal foundations and the actual proper setup of your business, you will need an attorney on your team. And I stressed that a lot last night, of course, so I will stress that again today. So with that said, let's get going. Let me go into screen share mode. Share my screen. Nope, that ain't what I want. This. Hopefully everyone can see it. Okay. Well, let's go to the beginning. We have a lot to talk about tonight. So let's do a recap because a few people missed last night. So I'll just do a quick recap so last night we kind of talked a little bit about the what's and the whys and why it's not too late to start IV therapy and how the healthcare arena is changed, and consumers, us included, healthcare consumers want personalized, more proactive, preventive wellness care, right? And that has been shifting for years, and that is only going to continue to accelerate. So we talked a little bit about that. Then we went into some business foundations. So no worries, you will be able to watch this later. Okay, but we went through some of the foundational things such as the business plan, your business address, business banking, bookkeeping systems, starting to look at systems for your business, insurances, proper permitting and licensing that may be required by your city and state, sales tax account. If you, in some places or some states, medical services may be taxed. There's only 5. Most places they are not taxed, but if you plan to have products, those are taxed. So you would need to collect tax. So that's state sales tax account. And that puts us right into the foundational team. CPA and an attorney you should definitely have. We also mentioned that in some states it is considered outside of the scope, or that's the position of that state board of pharmacy or that state. It's outside of the scope of practice for RNs and possibly even APRNs to mix into a bag. So far, I know that that is maybe Louisiana for sure, and I want to say I heard some whispers of South Carolina. With that said, yes, that would require possibly ordering drips that are already mixed. I do feel like that is going to be a solution that comes along for those states, or having a pharmacist, which does increase your overhead. But again, you always have to account for everything involved when you are starting a business and pricing it. And that's what we're doing. We're accounting for what we need to be aware of and just determining if this will be the ideal route for you, right? And then we went through operations foundation. So your supply vendors, your vitamin vendors, payment processors, your systems, your SOPs, protocols, etc., phone systems, starting on your website, etc., etc. Okay, so that was kind of a summary of last night, and we had some good conversations surrounding all of these topics. So with that said, we'll see that slide again later. All right, so tonight we are starting with legal foundation. So just like last night, because I know that it may be a whole different crowd tonight, it may be some repeat, hopefully, but y'all let me know, as I always ask, where you are in your license. It's also interesting to know if you do already operate a business or are you looking to start. But one thing I will say, the great thing about this series that I'm doing this week is that it's helpful for either or. It's a nice opportunity for those who have started to go back and kind of look over everything and just consider what you may need to be aware of or address. And then if you're getting started, it's a nice review. Now, a lot of people were super surprised that I am doing a legitimate course, like 3 nights of this, for free. But I am. It's true. You're here. Y'all see it. Because this part of IV therapy, the full boot camp, will not be there anymore. This will be something that will be there, and you'll have access, anyone and everyone, to have this information before you ever come to IV therapy boot camp, the full edition. And the reason is because IV therapy bootcamp is a day. And if you attend live, it also includes some hands-on time. So there's only so many hours in that day. So what I'm doing is revamping and realigning and just accounting for updates and different things that are happening in the IV therapy world. So with that said, this part of class, I want you to already have been there, done this, considered all this before you ever showed up. So you're armed with information. You can make that decision on proceeding or not. And you know what you need to consider, look out for, research, before you ever set foot in the full course, which you do pay for, right? So that is kind of the reasoning for this. And in turn, and people who have attended bootcamp know, like, these are the bootcamp slides. Like, this is the information in bootcamp. So that first module of bootcamp is being revamped, and here it is for you all. All right, so legal foundation. Where do I begin? let me start in the chat and just see where everyone is. So we have Florida, Kansas. I always feel great about Florida because, like, I'm in Florida, right? So while I'm reading through these, if I'm new to any of you, I'm Dr. Rainika Stewart formally. You can find me on Facebook as Rainika Stewart, Concierge NP. Friend me, follow me, either or. I'm friendly. And you can also find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube as the Concierge Nurse Network. So connect somewhere so that you can stay in touch, because I will continue to do things like this. The Concierge Nurse Network, my goal is a full, engaged, interactive, and resourceful community. So that starts with me as the founder. So that is another aspect. So this is not the last time that you will see me. I will be here and ready to support nurses who were a lot like me, frustrated, burnt out, felt disrespected, overwhelmed, didn't feel like I had many options, and almost didn't think that owning a business was possible for me. So I'm your starting point. I would love to be your entry point, the person who encourages you, shows you what is possible, and on your journey, or as you consider nurse entrepreneurship. Okay, so I own a clinic in Tampa, Florida, concierge care, private nursing, post-op recovery, as well as IV therapy. That started in 2020. And it has grown, excuse me. I realized that post-op recovery and IV therapy, that was what I started with. Well, I tried to start with other things, but I had to hone it in. But I realized that I started in 2020. I was mobile. I moved into a space in October of 2020. I really had my first, I had a couple of clients, right, in the fall of 2020 for IV therapy. But I really started taking off about 6 to 8 months in 2021. And by July of 2021, that was my first month where I saw the replacement of my full-time income. My full-time income at that time, being an MP, was about $120 a year, maybe $110. I also got gas mileage and all those kind of things. But replacing my income at that salary was about a little over $8,000 to $9,000 a month, right? And July of 2021 was the first time I saw a replacement of my full-time income. And it did not take a ton of clients. It didn't take a whole lot of blood, sweat, and tears to take care of those clients. Building the business is another story. But when I saw that, in the meantime, something happened that meant that I could no longer do my corporate job. So I had a little bit of time off. And the minute I had more time to really focus, and almost like this is a sink or swim situation, my full-time income was staring me in my face, except it was from my business, not from my corporate job. So this is feasible. This is possible. And it doesn't take of course, who wouldn't want to have clients coming out the door? But on a good IV therapy day, you could literally make $1,000 and maybe only see 4 clients. And I've done it and I've loved it. I've had 2 clients within the same hour and made over $700, like I love those days. So, because of upsells and add-ons and all of those. So yes, you don't have to work as hard as far as the patient care, but yes, you do have to work hard on your business, getting those clients, marketing. So tonight is the legal foundation, and then tomorrow, our last night, will be the marketing foundation. So, all right, so Florida, Kansas, NC, UK. Okay, wait, isn't it like, were you the one that messaged me on Instagram telling me that it would be like midnight in the UK? I am flattered. Like, isn't it like midnight in the UK or later than that even? Because someone messaged me on Instagram saying that. And I was like, I understand. Just catch the recording. Let's see. Nurse coach loading, says Tiffany. Awesome. Yeah, in North Carolina. Cool. Arizona, my favorite. Last night was just basic foundations like your business name, your business banking, setting up your business with the state, setting up your business with the IRS. So that was last night's topics. Puerto Rico, I haven't had anyone that attended any of my boot camps for Puerto Rico. I've had as far away as Hawaii, of course, California, but not out of the country. That would be a first. Oh, it was you. Well, thank you for joining and staying. I hope you don't have to get up too early tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining. So, all right. Legal foundation. So we talked about the fact that you should, in fact, absolutely on your team have your attorney, right? And remember that I talked about yesterday, not just any attorney. So what we're doing as nurse entrepreneurs are starting this business is we're providing a niche service, typically cash pay, right? To a targeted niche clientele. There are so many niches within IV therapy. So mine was more so recovery. So I focused on people having surgery and or other needs of other types of recovery. That is my true focus, even still today. So, but knowing who you're targeting, I'm sorry, having your target and your niche in IV therapy means that you also need an attorney who is just as specialized and niched down as you are. So you don't want to go out and get a general business attorney. That's great, but you really do want an attorney who is a business attorney, but also understands and follows along and keeps up with laws relating to IV therapy. I always say go for med spa. Med spa attorneys, they typically kind of understand all different facets of med spas, which can include IV therapy, right? So you want them to be a business attorney. You want them to understand IV therapy, potentially home care, because some states, I hear this occasionally, that if you have a team of nurses that you're contracting to go into homes for IV therapy, that could require a home care license as well. So something to consider. Now, how the heck will you know if that's the case? The attorney that is well-versed in this that you hire to work within your state. This is why the attorney is so important. And yes, they're going to be one of your larger expenses. Now we know that concierge nursing, I do, post-op is one of my niches, but in IV therapy, the startup cost in comparison to most businesses and the entry into this is not as extreme or high financially, but that does not mean that there's not any money involved. With IV therapy, I would say for your legal, you would want to have set aside anywhere from about $2,500 to $5,000. If you're in a state that has additional steps that are needed to set up that we're going to talk about, that may approach definitely more like the $5,000 to $7,000. Does that sound unsavory and frustrating? Yes. But remember, see the bigger picture here. Remember, I said problems, challenges, regulations. That doesn't mean run. It doesn't mean bury your head in the sand. That doesn't make anything impossible. Just know what you're getting into. And hopefully no one's still selling the dream that it's like you're going to put 1,000 out, start doing IV drips tomorrow in someone's home, and then make $1 million in a year. So hopefully that is not true. Business is very gradual. It takes time. to build that momentum. It takes time of planting those seeds. Okay. So yes, be prepared and understand that, yes, there are some expenses. You may not spend that amount all at once. It may be over the course of a few months as you are getting set up. But yes, legal will be one of your bigger expenses, but I say one of your most worth it expenses, okay? Especially if you can really have that good foundational relationship with your attorney and they can advise and be there for you. This will be the ideal thing as your business continues to grow. Eventually, you want to hire a team. Eventually, you may want contractors or employees. Having those, the attorney and the tax professional will be priceless in how they can advise you as your business grows. Okay. Like taking the time, investing the time and the money now at the beginning is going to definitely pay off later. Now, business is risky. Okay. So, yes, you are going to put out money before you ever see a dime. It is very normal for a business to be at a loss for a few years, okay? So you may have the cash flow. I saw that $8,000 and a little over 8, right? I have replaced my full-time income. That doesn't mean that that was profit. But what it did say was, you've replaced your full-time income. Even my full-time income wasn't all profit, right? There was gas that I had to consider because I did house calls. I have to buy work uniforms. So same here. It wasn't all profit, but I still saw it. And I said, whoa, this is totally feasible. And I thought back on that month and what I had done. And I didn't work nearly as hard as I was working in my 40-hour plus per week job. Okay. So your attorney is going to be very important. Okay. So your attorney is part of your legal foundation, of course, right? Now, most of us, unless you are a nurse practitioner in a full practice state, we are going to need a collaborative physician. Okay. So don't let that stop you. Don't let that frustrate you. There are physicians, especially now as nurse entrepreneurship has grown, there are so many out there. And I know the frustration for NPs of we shouldn't even need one for this. I get it. But there are many out there who are reasonable, who will support your business, who will provide what is needed according to your state. Okay. There are those physicians out there. Healthcare is collaborative. It always will be. It always has been. No different with this. Now, do you want a physician that you're paying a certain percentage or that they're part owner like of your direct business? No, we'll talk about that. But having a collaborative physician, being aware of what you need from them according to your state laws. Every state is a little bit different, but be aware of what you need. That is going to affect the price that you would pay them. Okay. You will need to have an agreement with your collaborative physician, but that agreement, people will say, how the heck do I know what to put in that agreement? That agreement is based on what is required by your state. Okay, the next question, because I've been doing this a while, can y'all tell? How the heck do I find out what I need from my physician in my state? I'm glad you asked, because typically when you go to search for that as an RN, you're not going to find what a physician needs to do to provide oversight to an RN, right? You will find it in every state for a physician and a nurse practitioner, collaborative or medical director supervisory relationship. The laws just haven't caught up with as fast as nurse entrepreneurship has grown. And remember, I said last night, most laws, the Board of Pharmacy, the supervisory requirements for physicians with nurse practitioners, all of these things were written for us to be employees. None of this was written with the thought of nurse entrepreneurs and nurses owning and operating their own businesses. Okay. Now, let's make a side note here. I'm still a huge advocate. I love IV therapy. I've been doing IV therapy, but let me just say, side note, I love concierge, regular general concierge care. I'm a huge advocate just because there's less of this to deal with. Okay, back to IV therapy. So being aware of what you need from your physician. Now, remember, you're the business owner. This is business. The best thing you can really learn about business or operating a business, and some of you are going to know this, is one, the mindset. It's a completely different mindset, okay? You're not in the hospital or in an environment where you're waiting on them to direct or guide or give you orders. This is, we love our autonomy, right? This is more autonomous, but you're taking on a different type of relationship in that this is truly more of a side-by-side collaboration, not a this is what you do, but they're still providing oversight within the parameters defined by your state. But that doesn't mean that you should be intimidated or even frustrated or run from this. You do need to hire one, and you do need to interview them. You do need to be sure that everything aligns. You do need to have an agreement. Should you involve an attorney in that process? I say yes, possibly, but you do need to outline everything, okay? We talked about insurance last night, but again, it's here again because from a legal standpoint, you want to have insurance. Now, remember last night I said every state may have a little bit of a different requirement for your professional liability coverage, okay? So in Florida, ours is really low. It's like, I want to say, I still didn't get to look it up, but maybe 250,000 per occurrence and maybe 500,000 or 600,000 aggregate. So you'll see the insurance outlined as per occurrence and then an aggregate amount, right? So most policies, when they quote you, they're going to give you a quote for $1 million per occurrence and 6 million aggregate. Most of us in some states, we don't need that much coverage, okay? So when you're looking at your professional liability insurance, be sure it's going to cover what you plan to offer, and I do mean everything, okay? You may need additional policies. I know some do not cover some certain aspects of body contouring and other possible aesthetic services. And if you're going into IV therapy, most likely you're either going to go aesthetics. Most of us don't just do IV therapy, right? Or you're going to go more like wellness and recovery, which is what I do. So wellness and recovery, Normatec, red light, and just other services like that that add on to wellness and recovery. Aesthetics, Botox, fillers, lasers, et cetera, right? So a lot of people go one or the other. And some people even go just kind of general functional medicine with IV therapy as an option, okay? So, but be sure that whatever the case may be and whatever you're looking to offer, your liability insurance covers it. If you have a location, remember I mentioned general liability, not a huge cost to add that on to your professional policy. And then also look into, remember I said, business insurance that covers your location if you're going to have a location, okay? Keeping in mind too that if you're searching for your location and you're signing a lease, again, this I can definitely tell you, have an attorney. I did my lease without one. It is not that I got a bad deal, but I could have gotten a better deal, I'm sure, if I had utilized or had the attorney look that over, okay? So with that said, you can see there will be different steps along the way, that it's just such a peace of mind to have that advice and to have them double checking things, okay? So if you're looking for space, I feel like I could do a whole separate webinar on corporate leasing, but nonetheless, location is important, okay? But having insurance to cover that location is also essential, especially if you're going to have furniture and other equipment in there, okay? And I also mentioned last night, and this is good for legal, is automobile insurance, especially for business use of your car. We just had an incident in my concierge, on the concierge side of my business, where one of the nurses was transporting a client and a man rear-ended them. Now, it was mostly like he was going less than 5 miles an hour. He kind of more tapped, but she was transporting a client fresh out of surgery. So she did stop and pull over and attempt to talk to him and discuss, insurance, and he drove off. So they had to write that up as a hit and run. My client has already called an attorney. She's like recovering from surgery. She's called an attorney. It's okay. It's insane. It's still ongoing investigating. They had to go and track the man down. So insurance. Okay, important. Let me look at the questions. I'll take a sip. It's just bubbly, y'all. Let's see. Okay, that's talked about that. I see y'all are talking about prices. That's a good point. And yeah, this is very informal. So like this conversation can take the twists and turns, like interact, chat, ask questions. This is not like a formal thing, okay? So if anyone has attorneys that they recommend, please share them. One of my goals has been to try to compile this list of attorneys for every state, but not just any attorney. It's just like what I mentioned, attorneys that understand what we do and understand the IV therapy med spa world. So let's see. Approximate annual for physicians. So I say that most of the time you're looking at anywhere from $500 a month to somewhere around maybe $1,000 a month, depending on your state and what you need for them. How do you find your state limits for your insurance? So I just do a search, like it took a little bit, but the Board of Nursing in Florida had ours listed. Like we have something called financial responsibility. So they had it listed, and mainly they're going to list it for nurse practitioners and or physicians, right? But typically I would go by what is required for a nurse practitioner because you're operating a business. And remember, you want to have your insurance, but you don't want to have an excessive amount. It affects your cost. But some people say, no, I want to have an excessive amount. That's just, God forbid, it just opens the door to more drama. Okay. So, but you can find it just by searching your state and professional liability legal limits is how, and you should start to see something come up for that. That's how I found it for Florida. Okay. Guardian is $7,200 a year for IV therapy. Yeah, they went up a little bit. Most all of these physician networks kind of run, and I don't recommend one over the other. If you're paying Guardian that $7,200 a month, that equates to about $600 a month. So I know they have a little discount if you pay for the year, so the monthly could be more. But I'm definitely seeing somewhere around $500 to $750 on average, and sometimes as high as $1,000. But usually when I see the $1,500 a month pricing is usually they've negotiated, they're more established, and also usually they're doing more aesthetics. They're not necessarily just doing IV therapy. So does the medical director need to be a general practitioner? This is another great question. It can be, most states, it can be an MD, DO. Remember that the medical director cannot be a chiropractor. I get this question for Florida. Can it be a nurse practitioner in Florida? No, I did a separate YouTube video on that. But the nurse practitioners in Florida, we don't have full practice authority. We have autonomous practice for primary care. We cannot be medical directors. So can you use a pediatrician or anesthesiologist for a medical director? Yes, you can. Now, there are some states that have requirements that your medical director is like they understand or they have experience in what they're providing the oversight for. So whether that's functional medicine, IV therapy, aesthetics, I know that in most states, it's not an issue. So you do want to be sure, because and your state will outline these things when they, again, where they outline physician oversight or supervisory relationships with nurse practitioners, they will outline this. Okay, so that's something else to be aware of and consider that they may be required. But as far as MD, DO, pediatrician, anesthesiologist, pain management, fine. Most of the time, that's fine. If anyone knows of an attorney in Pennsylvania, please drop them. This recording will be available later this week for sure. I've heard that Doctors for Providers is a good place. Yes, there's a Doctors for Provider. There's Guardian Medical Direction. There's, I think, Collaborating Docs is another network. So interview a few. They mainly match you with the physician. CRNAs, can they be medical directors? Is that the question? No. NP needs a medical, NPs, this is going to be super tricky. So do NPs need a medical director in Florida? So NPs are autonomous in Florida for family practice, wellness, disease prevention, health promotion. That's exactly what IV therapy is. And by the way, even as we finally got this autonomous practice in Florida, there still weren't very many nurse-owned or even NP-owned IV therapy clinics out there. So they didn't address this, but there have been some kind of position statements from some of the nurse practice organizations that have said their position is that we should have a collab for IV therapy, okay? They do say that. However, what a lot of nurse practitioners do in Florida is they offer primary care and IV therapy. So that's kind of how they fit it in. Now, You cannot do that with aesthetics, okay? In Florida, if you're going to offer Botox, fillers, etc., you have to have a dermatologist or a plastic surgeon. So Florida's one of those weird places where we can't just have an MD or a DO. We can't have, or an anesthesiologist. We cannot have any just general physician for oversight for aesthetics. We have to have a derm or plastics, interestingly enough. And RNs as of now cannot inject in Florida. That may be something that they're saying could change, but as of now, the laws are no. So yes, now remember, this ain't legal advice, but if you're offering primary care, and this is what most nurse practitioners do, they have primary care. So even me, that's why I have a wellness side to my clinic and I have a concierge side. On the wellness side, I'm an NP. I offer sick visits, primary care services, and the IV therapy and thyroid optimization. So those are primary care services. So yes, you can do that. There's even some little gray area somewhere where you could even offer just a little bit of aesthetics, as long as it's a certain percentage or less of your practice. I don't know how to quantify that. This is again where the attorney is important, because that could get sticky. Florida is super gray. A couple of nurses that sent me like their board of nursing positions, and I printed them out, and information as far as what their position on IV therapy and mixing and compounding. I think it's amazing. I like gray areas. Don't get me wrong. I've always been a little rebellious, but I love me a good black and white. This is what it is, versus some of these gray areas that can get a little frustrating. So for my wellness side and my cash based only, yes, I don't do anything with insurance, like nothing. Concierge side is cash, wellness clinic is cash. So yeah, nothing with insurances. Let's see, what kind of services can RN do without a collab? You can do what I do on my concierge side: post-op recovery, post-surgical, cosmetic post-surgical, wound care, concierge visits, senior care. I don't need a collab for that. And I just work within, and that's where I work more within my nursing scope versus my wellness clinic. I'm working in my NP scope. So just like a true Gemini, I have two sides to me and I have two sides to my business. Georgia is also super gray. You have to dig before you find an answer. And I mean, you do have to dig. Even Florida is the same way. And again, but I've talked to attorneys here, and they say, and they know of stuff that I didn't even think of. So I'm telling you, they're going to be worth it if they are experts in this. We're the expert in what we do. I can help you with the nursing and the operations, but I'm not the expert in, this is what you need to know for your state. So you do, having that attorney again, I felt like I'm a great researcher. I am. That's how I'm able to do what I do. I love research. I love reading. But I still, even with meeting and talking to attorneys, the things that I've learned and they've said, I was just like, you don't know what you don't know. It's like they always say. So I just can't stress enough how important that will be to you. All right. So business permits, I mentioned those. Those can be variable. Like, for example, Ohio. Who's in Ohio? There's a random permit in Ohio called a TDD, and it has to do with storing the medications and ordering medications. And it's a certain type of permit that sometimes is needed depending on a few different things that I won't get into. So being aware of, Florida has something called the Healthcare Clinic Establishment Permit. You don't always need that, but sometimes people get hung up because there's a vendor, McKesson, that asks you for your healthcare clinic establishment permit. And you're like, what the heck is that? But you only need it in certain situations in Florida. So being aware of permits and licensing that is required by your city and state is important. Okay. You are going to need a medical waste permit for sure. You are generating medical waste, regulated medical waste. Okay. So you need to go, and this is another Google, medical waste disposal, medical waste transport, medical waste permit in your city. Your state, because this is done at the state level. It's called a biomedical waste permit. And in Florida, it's good for 2 years. It's $85. So not an extreme cost. Okay. But you need it is for your sharps. And some states, you can ship your medical waste. Some states you can, like Florida, you can do pickup. I do pickup. So I have a actual red bag, red container box in my clinic, and that's where all my medical waste goes, and they do a pickup every 30 days. I have to keep up with the pickups because if you get an inspection, which did happen to me, by the way, if you get inspected, they'll want to see your medical waste permit. They'll want to see your sharps containers. They'll want to know, they'll want to see your red bags. They'll also want to see something called an exposure control plan. The exposure control plan, now those of you who have taken my bootcamp, you should know that the exposure control plan is in your toolkit, okay, your digital toolkit. But the exposure control plan is something super basic. It's just, and you can even find a template for an exposure control plan. That's where I found it online. But they'll want to know what is your process for cleaning up hazardous waste or spills or needle sticks, okay? So they'll want to see that. And then they'll also want to be sure that whatever their policy is for medical waste in your state and how often it must be shipped or disposed of, that you're within those parameters. There are some states occasionally that may require an inspection before you even start. I don't know of many, but I started, right? Remember I told y'all I started my business and put my home address on it? Well, guess who showed up to do my medical waste inspection? The Department of Health to my house. That was fun times. And it's so crazy because I had just realized the error of my ways and using my home address on my business. So I had fixed it. And I had a virtual address. And then I also had just moved into my location. So eventually they did the inspection at my location. So another question that people ask me is, well, if I'm mobile and they want to do an inspection, how do we do it? They can meet you, if they want to inspect you, like here in Florida, they'll reach out. If they can't find you or track you down, they like to pop up, but they will call you and you could have them meet you like at your virtual office where you have your virtual address at, right? If you're mobile and you're storing the sharps in your trunk, they'll just want to see that you're properly storing them and properly disposing of them. Okay, so that is still possible to be mobile. There are places where you can do an exchange where you can go drop off your waste. Again, you could possibly mail your medical waste in. So this is not a hindrance. It's like it doesn't keep you from being mobile. Okay, let's see. So how do you get a virtual address? So I'm going to make that short because that was a last night topic, but with a virtual address, you look for a physical office space in your city. Typically, you want to look for executive suites. You want to look for co-working spaces. And then the few people mentioned last night, places called Opus, like OPUS and Regis. Those are very popular virtual office businesses. That's what they do, and they have them in multiple cities and states. So, but you want a place that has a physical location that will show up on Google Maps. This is part of that marketing foundation we'll talk about tomorrow. And you want to have the address there. So basically, if someone Googled it, it looks like you're there, but you don't have an actual physical office there, okay? So that does take a little time of research and calling around because you want to be sure that it's actually in your city and in an area that you would want to show up in on that map. Let's see. How do you set this up when you're mobile? Were you referring, Adrian, to the biomedical waste? Did I answer that? I think I answered it. But you set it up the same. Whether you're mobile or have a location, you will start with getting that permit. When you go to apply for your medical waste permit, they will ask you, if you're in a state, they will ask you, like, what is your mode, or do you have a transporter? So typically, you kind of have to work backwards there and research the transporters, call around and get quotes. Transporters, I use Stericycle, but think MedPro, Stericycle, MediGreen. Those are examples of transporters, okay? So typically you want to nail down your transporter, then do your permit, put your transporter on there, and then you pay the fee to get your permit. That's good for 2 years in Florida. So, but yeah, no matter mobile or location, that process will be similar. And let's go to Clear Waiver. Clear waiver. So I saw this question in the Concierge Nurse Network Facebook group. Someone said that they want to offer the service of drawing blood and transporting it to the lab. Do you need a clear waiver for that? No, you do not. A clear waiver is for doing simple pretty much you're going to get a result within, a short time frame. Usually it's about 5 to 15 minutes max, and it's point of care testing. So think a urinalysis dip, think a strep test, think I do a hemoglobin test. Those are CLIA, flu, strep, all of those. Those are CLIA waived tests, okay? The CLIA waiver is a certificate, not a certificate, it's a form, an application. You fill it out, and you would find this by going to CLIA waiver in your state on Google, and you will fill out the form. And from there, they tell you where to mail it to. So every state has a special office that processes these. Now in Florida, we mail it to Tallahassee, right? And they look it over, and they will want to know every single test that you intend to offer. Now, if you're doing IV therapy and you're not doing point of cares or adding on some sort of maybe wellness or even like primary care services, you likely do not need a CLIA waiver, okay? But they will look everything over. They want to know everything you plan to offer. You would need to put the test that you're going to offer, the supplier for the testing system. So say you want to offer urinalysis, you would need to go on. I use the website called clearwaived.com, and you just go on there and search all the different test kits. And they want you to put the name brand, the number of tests in the kit. So they want the full breakdown. The application will tell you exactly what they need, right? If you're mobile, they'll want the VIN number for your car. You can't mess it up, because if you do, the only thing that happens is they email you and say, hey, we have your application, fix this. They won't even allow you to pay for it until your application is fully approved. So you can't mess up CLIA waiver. So you do it, put exactly what they asked for, and send it in. And then once they approve it, they issue the permit, and then you go pay. Or you go pay once they approve, and then you get the permit, okay? So CLIA waiver is not as hard, but it's definitely good to be able to offer those tests. Now let's talk about like when people do like the nutrient testing or some of those other tests that people add on and do in conjunction with IV therapy. Those do not require a CLIA waiver. Typically, you're partnered with the lab in those cases. They give you the supplies to perform that test. You do the test, and then you send it in, right? Typically, you're sending that back to the lab. You're not processing those results. You're not the lab. You're just the collector, okay? So when you're the collector, you do not need a CLIA waiver. So yes, you could do like the nutrient testing and the saliva testing and all those different things and not have to have a CLIA waiver, okay? You can draw blood if you want to add that as a concierge service, transport it to a lab to be processed. That does not require a CLIA waiver. Let's see, any questions about that? Let's see, INR. An INR would be a point of care test, yes. And I know some home care agencies do that. So yes, an INR, where you're collecting the blood and you're putting it into a cartridge on the machine. A1C, think of A1C, or AccuCheck is what we call it, or blood sugar check, if you want to be able to do a blood sugar check, or an A1C or INR. Yes, those are point of care testing. Another question I see, can an RN, this is a great one, can an RN provide point of care testing without oversight? I would say you need to have an order for that point of care test, because that's still a test. So in a lot of states, you have to be an RN. In some states, even an MP. Some states were requiring MPs to be the lab director for the CLIA waiver. So something else to consider. So glad you asked that question. In some states, it can be a nurse, an RN. And in other states, it has to be an MP or higher for the CLIA waiver. But yeah, like you're not going to want to do test or collect information like that, or stick someone's finger, any of those without an order. So yes, I would say, yes, you need to have oversight for CLIA, your CLIA lab. Let's see, what type of info do they want? I think I covered that. Your name, your business, of course, and then every single test you intend to offer. And I do mean every. If you send that application in and you get approved and then you decide to add a different test later, you have to do an amendment. So they want to know everything that you're offering to authorize it. Okay, someone said, since last night they got their address. Awesome. Apply for LLC. Okay, I love that you got it going. That's lovely. So congratulations to Sharonda. She went and took some action, and that's always a good thing. Let's see. And then Lisette says, is That's the same as using a registered agent. So a registered agent is typically the person who does your annual report, and your registered agent could possibly be your attorney, by the way, if they help you set up your business structure. But a registered agent pretty much receives the correspondence from the state regarding your business. They file your annual report with the state for you. And some people use a registered agent and they put them on the business instead of their sales. I always act as my own. I've heard advantages and disadvantages to both, but I don't even see the need to pay for registered agent services. I want to be the person who gets all correspondence. So that's kind of my rationale. I'm my own registered agent. But yeah, you can have a registered agent. Like if you go through a company like InkFile or LegalZoom, they will offer registered agent services, and you just have to pay for them per year. Let's see. Yeah, I thought Clio wasn't too bad when I did it back. I did mine back in 2020. Let's see. And then I had to renew it, and I can't remember when that was because I think it's just every 2 years too. Let's see. Okay, Samantha says she's focusing on care management. Will Clio ever be worthwhile? What test are you thinking you would need for care management? Are you looking to do some things like where you would need a result, like for example, an INR or a blood glucose? If not, you probably would be fine without it. Let's see. She said not ready to add the wellness side. However, it does sound appealing. You can do a lot with the Clio waiver too. I offer iron infusions, so that's one of the things I do. Hemoglobin tests. Let's see. I use my virtual address. Yeah, you can do that. You can be the registered agent and then use your virtual address. I really don't want my home address or anything that's personal like that on my, because that's state business. Usually it's public knowledge. So yeah, you don't want your home address there. Let's see. Samantha, we may not need it. Yeah, if they have a like a PCP that orders the test, that's a good point too that Lena says. If they say I have an order or request from my PCP for an INR, that's different. That doesn't require you to have the oversight. Me now, of course, I would want that order, copies, whatever the case may be for their for documentation, but that would be a situation where you could offer that service. They have an order. Let's see. I keep mentioning red light therapy. What all does that entail? It's off topic. Red light therapy I use it for post-op care. You can use it for general wellness, pain, but it's different frequencies in a light, and certain ones are therapeutic. Red, near infrared is what I use, and very beneficial to healing. If you visit my I don't think I posted about it. Actually, I just posted it on the Concierge Nurse Network page. I just posted a little blurb about red light. Go look at the Concierge Nurse Network on Instagram. Hopefully you're on Instagram. But yes, I love red light. It is a great add-on. And you can do it mobile too, by the way. Great information. Thank you. What type of point of care do you do on the wellness side? I mainly do hemoglobin. I don't really do much else. I can, because I wanted to kind of have this urgent care, primary care aspect to my business. And I think I told y'all how many different things I thought I was going to do, but I've really been more niched down into the, concierge and wellness. But I was looking for, like, maybe if I was doing urgent care, strep, flu, but I do hemoglobins. That's the main thing I use my Clio waiver for. Let's see. But yes, to reinforce that question, can we get an order from the client's PCP and then draw or do point of care? Yep. You have an order. So that works. And where do you get educated on red light? I educated in my boot camp for post-op. But generally speaking, there's a website where I ordered my red light called Platinum LED. I love their red light. They have a full course on red light. It's not a course for the sake. They have so much education on their website. So take a look. That's where I actually got my red lights for my clinic too. Platinum LED. They're amazing. Let's see. Someone got the IV virtual boot camp that's on demand. Does that include the toolkit? Yes. So the IV therapy essentials toolkit, yes. And the updates, because I've updated that a lot as far as the iron infusion protocols, some things about mixing USP 797. So yes, you have the toolkit. Within that on-demand course, there's a module that tells you how to access it. So yeah, let's see. Michelle says, I looked it up and found the mask. I found cool. Oh yeah, but not the mask. I use like an overhead, like red light. But the mask is nice too. But red light therapy is a great add-on to IV therapy. Um, how do we get information about where we will send the labs if we incorporate it? So if you're doing, there's companies out there that offer like nutrient testing. So I would say even within my IV therapy group, there's probably, if you search that topic, you know how you can search groups, search some IV therapy groups. Mine is the IV therapy and med spa collaborative on Facebook, but there's companies that offer nutrient testing, and you just basically get an account with them and purchase the test kits from them. And then once you collect a sample, whatever that sample may be, you ship it back to that lab for them to process. But yeah, another great add-on. I don't use it so much, but it is a great add-on. This recording, I see another question about the recording. It will be uploaded to my YouTube channel. That's where these will be. And it will be it'll be after this weekend, once we finish all 3 sessions. So that's a bit about the CLIA waiver. And this business attorney and tax professional, y'all see they just keep popping up. So now let's talk about something else. Oh, let's see. So let's talk about who can own a drip lounge, right? So a drip lounge in some states, this is a medical procedure, a medical process. This is a medical business. So in some states, you have to have a medical license to own a medical business. Now in Florida, anyone, think places that like people think surgery centers. That's my world right there. Surgery centers, they're owned by businesses or business guys or investors, right? But they employ the physicians and the nurses and the staff to do the medical procedures. In some states, that's not legal. In some states, the ownership has to be a medical licensed professional or a physician. Okay, so that's one thing. Florida is not one of those states. Now, I already said to hire an attorney and be prepared for the suspense, because some states have way stricter corporate practice of medicine laws than others. And that's what we're kind of talking about when we start to talk about who can own a drip lounge. If a nurse can hire a physician as their collab, does that physician have to own a percentage of the business? When you hear those terminologies and those phrases, we're talking about corporate practice of medicine. Okay, so basically the premise of corporate practice of medicine was that medical license, or the person with the medical license, is the person making the decisions in the best interest of what is best medically for patients. So it's not a bunch of business people directing and dictating medical practice. Isn't that laughable? Let's just take a second to laugh at that, because we know that that's half of the time what is happening. But the premise of corporate practice of medicine was that that would not be happening. So some states are very strict on this. So that it wasn't created to frustrate us as nurse entrepreneurs starting our IV therapy business. These laws have been there. It's just something that now we run into as we enter this realm. So it's not new though. So with that said, simply put, who can own a healthcare business in a state? Some states are way more strict on corporate practice of medicine. And with that said, that may bleed over into the process of a nurse hiring a physician for that oversight, right? So in some states, that's not legal. You can't hire or employ a physician directly. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because some of these collaborative doctor networks, they are not set up or prepared to deal with corporate practice of medicine. So I say this to you, even if you're going to use that network, you need to be sure that your business structure is compliant if your state has these extensive corporate practice of medicine laws. Don't count on that physician network to set up this or get this set up for you, or be sure you're compliant. I'm running into a lot of nurses that I may talk to them, meet with them, and ask them some of these questions when they tell me they're using these networks, and they're like, wait, I don't know if I'm compliant that way. So it's not their intent to not be compliant. They're definitely not bashing, but I'm saying to you, it's just your duty as the business owner and working with your attorney to just be sure that your structure is appropriate outside of this. And let me also take a moment to say, I get questions about using companies that kind of provide all that business structure. So they're providing the collaborative physician, they're providing your documentation systems, they're providing your forms, your contracts, your payment, like all the structure, right? They're providing all of it. First of all, anyone who took my class, I'm like, you have it, you can do this, you can set this up. But anyway, I won't get on that soapbox, but I understand, okay, because it's kind of everything. You might pay a yearly fee, a monthly fee, a percentage of your sales. I don't recommend you doing that without being sure that you know what you're getting into, okay? Sometimes these companies have non-compete clauses. So if you're not working with them any longer, you may not be able to operate your business. So keep that in mind, okay? Some of them, you are not allowed to set up your own account. So you don't set up your vendor accounts. You have to do all of that through them. So if I know this happened, some of you may be able to agree that there was a company that was offering a setup like this, and then things went up in smoke, unfortunately, and it left a lot of nurses without anything. They didn't have medical accounts, they didn't have vendor accounts, supply accounts, vendor accounts, they didn't have a collab, like they lost everything. And I'm like, I say, I recommend those, how do I say this nicely? Those businesses solve a problem, okay? They do. That's what businesses do. We solve problems, okay? There is a need that I've seen in the market for them, but again, know what you're getting into, weigh the pros and cons, look at everything. It's kind of like if you're going to get a franchise versus do it yourself, right? We know that there's going to be different advantages and disadvantages to both. Know what you're signing, know what you're agreeing to. And yeah, unfortunately for a few nurses, it kind of left them like scrambling because they didn't even have a way to order vitamins because everything was through these companies. They made it convenient and easy. Like I said, that was an answer to a problem, right? But I say to you, set your structure up into, even if you later decided, already have, just still set your entire structure up as if that company does not exist. That is what I recommend. Now, let me tell you how I can tell you for sure, because I did it. I set my entire company up. Everything was good to go. I had my supply vendors. I had my vitamin accounts. I had my collab. Everything was a go. And then I was like, I came across a company and I was like, but they have the systems and they have an app and, they have everything. Let me just roll with them. Luckily for me, I already had all my structure there because it was not a good relationship. It was not a good experience and I had to bail out on it. Luckily for me, I was still able to operate my business. But yes, inside of their contract, they do in fact have a non-compete. So technically, if they really wanted to come for you or me, they could have, right? Then a non-compete is for up to a certain amount of time. So yeah, just be careful with those scenarios, okay? But lucky me, I had already set up all my business structure. So even when I wasn't comfortable and I just was like, I want out of this, at least I had all that already in place. Let's see. I remember meeting this company at the conference I met you at. Yeah, I'm like, I ain't gonna say no names, but be careful of these. Just be careful, not to say that they're not useful or helpful or solve a problem, because some people, they're like, I just want everything in place and just, you kind of want that business in a box feel. But one thing I can say is there's something to be said for going through that process, doing this, setting things up and really getting it out the mud. Like, yeah, you don't want to make mistakes and you do want to have guidance, but I just have an issue. Maybe I'm a little control freak, just handing over, like, okay, just hand me the business. I kind of want to know the inner workings and have put that in place. Let's see. Wanda says, I know what I'm talking about. Some days, look, it's half of it now is that I've lived it and learned. Let's see. So Michelle says she has to go. Okay, Michelle, well, we'll see you tomorrow. Let's see. Do you suggest working with another nurse? Oh, that's another. So that's a great question to talk about under legal. So I know that there's definitely advantages to collaborations. And believe me, some days it would be so nice to have another nurse. Like, my husband's amazing. He's supportive. He helps me. He's my operations manager. That's his title. but it's something to be said for having another nurse like this there and understands things that he doesn't. It's scary navigating business, but if you're going to go into a partnership, it's a completely different setup from you being setting up your business yourself, and you need to have an attorney. And this is where you need to really outline in your operating agreement. Remember last night I said you set up your business and you do articles of organization, but you also need an operating agreement. Well, the operating agreement in the case of a partnership of 50-50, whatever the case may be for ownership, is going to be absolutely essential. You need to outline the exit plan. You need to outline decision making. You need to outline if you agree, if you don't agree, money, foundational startup funds, and you need an attorney, okay? Because a business like that, like going into a business with someone, just look at it as marriage. It's very intimate and there's a lot of trust involved. There's a lot of communication. It is a marriage, okay? And just like a marriage, it's a legal contract, and you need to have, unfortunately, you need to have an exit plan. And let me just say this, that's business in general. Do any of us, we know we're not doing this forever. So whether you're selling your business as an exit plan, passing it to someone as an exit plan, have an exit plan. If you're starting your business alone, have an exit plan. If you're starting it with a partner, definitely have an exit plan, okay? So that will, I don't suggest it exactly per se. I heard a quote that said like, there's like certain ships that always kind of blow up or explode, and one of them was like a partnership. So I don't remember the exact quote, but I remember being like, ooh, and I've seen it just being in this industry and like seeing, but that's not to discourage you, because I've also seen successful ones, okay? There's so many successful collaborations and partnerships out there. So don't let me, be, I don't want to be negative, but when I tell you that you can't be too careful with that, you have to put all feelings, emotions, and love aside and really be about your business and about what's best for you. Like, make sure your interest as well as theirs. Like, you got to protect your interest. Okay. Let's see. Amanda said Samantha said she wouldn't go through LegalZoom. I recommend working more with someone that you can keep working with as well. So I agree. Let's see. Mobile RNs, how do you charge for red light? You can charge by the minute, but my red light is typically by the minute. Sometimes it could be a nice it's an upsell, but sometimes it could even be a compliment, like, hey, free red light when you book your drip, because it doesn't cost me anything. So I love to pair with IV therapy something else that's a low cost, and also something that I don't have to be there hands-on to do. So red light, Normatec compression are two of my favorites. And then in my clinic, I have an oxygen bar. What are you using it? So red light, outside of post-op care, red light has general health benefits. So you can use it, and it's a great upsell or add-on even to a general drip. So they don't even have to have had surgery. And then let's see. So oxygenbars.com. Oxygenbars.com. Let me type that in the chat. That's where I got mine from. And the ladies in there, you can literally call them and kind of tell them what you're looking for, and they'll give you ideas, on how to build up an oxygen bar. They'll basically give you a full course. They're really helpful. But yeah, that's who I got mine from. Okay, y'all, let's talk about the unsavory MSO MSA. So in some states, you kind of have to go into a partnership with the physician, right? So they have to provide oversight to you, but you can't hire them directly. So how do you hire them? You have to hire them. They have to own the company. Now, that doesn't mean your company. Remember, you hear they have to own 51%. They don't have to own your company. So let's say your company is Adaptive Wellness. That's mine, right? They don't own Adaptive Wellness. I own Adaptive Wellness, but the physician does own the company that provides the oversight to Adaptive Wellness. So that company is called an MSO, Managed Service Organization, okay? That organization provides oversight to your business, and the terms of that oversight / partnership and ownership is outlined in something called a MSA, Managed Service Agreement, okay? Who the heck would set something like this up? An attorney. And this is where, if you're in a state that requires MSO, MSA setup, this is where the attorney retainer does get expensive. Okay. It could be more, or there's going to be more cost. Okay. Because expensive is relative. Some people are like, oh, that's minor in exchange for my autonomy and freedom, right? in operating this business. So, but it is an additional cost. Okay. But that, in some states that I can think of right off, for that require that, I want to say is Texas, New York, and California, and there may be more, but those are just some that I can think of right off. And I do, in fact, y'all, love my oxygen bar, by the way. So, collaborative physician medical director, here's a few hints. Yes, you may have an MSO, MSA, and that does require doing certain things with your finances within the business as well, which is, again, where the attorney is going to be so important. But even if you are in an MSO, MSA state and your physician has to own 51% of that MSO, that does not equal 51% of your profits, or that you need to pay them. That is not the case. Okay. You still would be paying a flat fee that you have agreed upon. Okay. I also hired my physician off of Indeed. And I even did an exercise the other day with a nurse that I was mentoring, and I posted an Indeed ad. And so far, as of the last count, I had 17 resumes submitted to that job for collab, and it was very simple. So it's totally feasible to do it that way too. The advantage of doing it that way is you get to name the price, or more so negotiate it, than if you go through one of the networks. Okay. But interview them, discuss the roles and requirements, and I onboard them like W-9, which is their name, address, social, but their information for tax purposes, how they prefer to be paid. They do need to sign like an agreement for the oversight, but also be sure that that includes something called a non-disclosure or privacy agreement, because they will have access to your client's private information, right? But yes, avoid paying a percentage of profits. And how much you pay, if they're overstock, more is required from them. If there's a mileage requirement, if there's a review of this many charts requirement, if there is a on-site visit requirement, there's different requirements in different states. That is more so going to determine your actual agreement, but also possibly it's going to affect the price. Me being an MP in Florida, I don't need much from my collab. So I'm like $300 a month. But yeah, more reasonably, if you're going to need a couple of hours of time, yes, you do need to possibly pay. You're going to need to pay more, but be reasonable. But you can name your price when you post your job listing yourself. That is an advantage. Let's see what I see here. The oxygen bar can be mobile, but it's heavy as heck. Okay, y'all. It's the concentrator is the problem. You can get a mobile relaxation station is what it's called. And yes, an RN, you can add that, because it's not medical oxygen. It's a concentrator that concentrates room air. And then you add the aromatherapy to it. So yes. Do you have sample agreements in the toolkit? Yes, I have the entire collaborative bundle is within that toolkit. So the toolkit we're talking about, it's either for the first time ever, you can purchase it separately, but traditionally it had only been available for those who attended IV Therapy Bootcamp. Now you can attend IV Therapy Bootcamp, it's automatically included, lifetime access, or you can purchase it separate from IV Therapy Toolcamp. But yes, IV Therapy Bootcamp, y'all. But wait till tomorrow. It's gonna be Thursday. I'm gonna be like, my brain's even more so gonna be fried. But yes, it's available for separate purchase. And just like last night, I'll send another like email tonight and tell you how to get that. So be on the lookout. And by the way, side note on the emails, everybody who registered, like, you're getting the emails, but there were a few of y'all that your emails didn't work. So you may not be getting the follow-ups. You may not get the notification of when the replays are available. So if you don't get it, just email me and I'll give y'all my email. Let's see. Did you do the paper? I did it for free. I see when you log on to Indeed to post your collaborative physician job requisition that it'll give you the option to pay, but you can scroll down and push skip or no thanks, and it will let you usually post it for free. Does a collaborative physician need to be licensed in the state where you are. Yes. So they need to be licensed in your state. They don't now, like in Florida, they can be anywhere. They could be in New York, but they have a Florida license. They can provide oversight here. But in some states, keep in mind that if there's a mileage requirement and they have to be within so many miles of you, then they do need to reside in your state, or they need to be in that mileage requirement. Most places have kind of let go of that, but just keep in mind that that could be the case, okay? But yeah, they do need to be licensed in your state. And some cases, rarely, they may need to be in your state. Let's see. But yeah, I have inside of that IV therapy toolkit, there is the collaborative agreement. There's a Indeed like sample. There's interview questions for your collab. There's a template for presenting your business. But there's also, that's inside. And then there's even a place where I have like a couple of free downloads of some of that too. But not the agreement. The agreement is only inside of the toolkit. What was the question about Washington State? Oh, Washington is CPOM. There's a few, quite a few out there. It's just that I've had students frequently from Texas and New York. So I definitely, and California. Does collaborative position? Okay, yeah, I read that one. Okay, cool. Great questions. Let me check this side. Let's see. I think that's no, that's not an old question. Can it be a CRNA? No. CRNA is not a their scope wouldn't allow. Now this is tricky because if this I don't think CRNAs even in full practice states have full practice authority. Full practice authority is usually nurse practitioners, right? Like adult, family. So with that said, not likely. Now, if it's a state that's not full practice authority, definitely not. But no, CRNA scope is not, to provide that kind of, like, they don't have full practice authority. I haven't heard of now, y'all, if I'm wrong, but I haven't heard of CRNAs having full practice authority anywhere. They usually always have to have that oversight. Let's see. If a CPOM state, can RN still run the business? Yes. It's just going to be an extra layer of setup. But yes, yeah, and that's why I'd like to do this, because I want you to know what to be aware of and what to research. Even though my courses are not like, I ain't gonna say, they're very reasonable, okay? But it's still an investment. Before you invest, I'd like for you to have this information. That's why it's now available outside of bootcamp. It's good information to have access to before you invest. But yes, you can. Let's see. So someone said, okay, Emmanuel said, you purchased the on-demand bootcamp. Does this come? Yes, the on-demand, that bundle, yes, they both come with the tool. So post-op has a toolkit, by the way, as well, but that was not separate. And then IV therapy bootcamp has its own toolkit. So yes, when you purchase the bundle, the on-demand that you did, you have both, definitely. Let's see. And then what about Tennessee? Well, I'm a Tennessean for most of my life. So I don't know of corporate practice and medicine issues in Tennessee. So amen to that. That's another place where I want to get my license back. I have my Kentucky license back. So I need my Tennessee license back. You are welcome, Emmanuel. So yeah. All right, let's talk about the good faith exam. So when I started IV therapy, it was like, especially if you were an RN, you just got a collab or a supervising physician, and they gave you some standing orders, and off you went into the sunset. Now we know, especially in light of some of the things that we've seen happening in the landscape, that is coming back and biting people in the butt. You can't just operate off of standing orders, right? So IV therapy is a medical procedure which does require the establishment of a provider-patient relationship in addition to standing orders. And then I even have some information here, even from the Arizona Board of Nursing, that says in black and white that standing orders are not enough, that you can't just give standing orders. You do have to, in fact, establish a provider-patient relationship. And the way that it's established, whether you're in Arizona or any other state, is going to be via the good faith exam. And that's another layer legality, right? But it establishes a provider-patient relationship. You need to do this prior to the appointment. Informed consent should be part of this. Review of medical history, allergies, determining appropriateness of that service for that client. Typically, if they are new to IV therapy, you're going to do that once a year, or if there's a change in their position or they're doing a different service. So say you offer Botox and fillers too, but you good faith examine them for IV therapy vitamin injections, and then they come back later. So the different service or changes in condition will require another good faith exam, okay? So keep that in mind. Can they be done in person? Yes. But can they also be done via telemedicine? Yes. This is going to vary by state laws, whether that needs to be a phone call or whether a video is required. That is going to vary. And that is the way that would really be determined would be based on telehealth laws in your state. What is required to establish a provider-patient relationship? Some states, for controlled substances, for example, that requires an actual in-person visit. But in most states, we know you don't need that for typical, like a sick visit. Think like a typical telemedicine, an earache. So this kind of falls under that. So if they require what they call synchronous or video, then you would need to do it that way. But in a lot of states, they can actually do this as a telephone call, okay? But yes, there needs to be the establishment of this relationship. It needs to be documented. And Arizona even goes on to say that the orders for a client should not be standing. It should be personalized and specific to them. So this is where, and I love it. Like I said, I love that they outlined this and said it and just put it in black and white, because is none of us want to take a shortcut and risk our license or anyone's life by any means, right? We want to do what we're supposed to. We just need to know what that is. So when states come out and have these position statements and outline these things, I find it to be, sometimes it gets a little stressful or intimidating for people. I think it's amazing. Like, give me the information so that I know what I need to do, okay? But one thing that you may run into being an RN is who does this good faith exam? I have a collaborative physician or supervisory physician, but they don't necessarily want to do that. So that may also require hiring it out to an NP, or there are companies that solve this problem, y'all. There's companies that offer good faith exams out there, and that's all they do. Some of them charge a membership per month, and then you pay per exam. But yeah, there are companies out there. By the way, just a little shameless plug. If anyone needs good faith exams in Florida, I do now offer them. Message me. We can set that up. It's just a matter of setting, we talk about your business, we do an interview, and I review everything with you, and I have an agreement. Inside of the toolkit, the IV therapy toolkit, I outline the components of a good faith exam, and I also added in an agreement if you are going to hire this out. An agreement for hiring it out. So that is something else. I don't even know if I mentioned that is in the toolkit. That toolkit keeps growing. Okay. I told y'all it keeps growing and growing. I don't, but I'm gonna tell you now, because good faith exams are very important, obviously. That I'm looking at more licenses so that I could do that. But I see companies where they offer them, they have teams of NPs or providers that offer these good faith exams. But yeah, I'm just going to start with Florida for now, and then probably Tennessee and Kentucky. But honestly, I would really like to offer them more so in full practice states, because it's just a little less headache. But yeah, I definitely would consider it. I think I would have to retire from my clinic though, y'all. So what companies offer? One that I can think of off the top of my head, they don't pay me, but it's called DocuSpa, like DOCU Spa. So DocuSpa. And even if you went to Google and put in companies that offer good faith exam or med spa good faith exams, you might see a few more pop up. So yeah, and I like the companies like this because it's kind of on demand. You can, if you're going to have your physician do them, you may have to do them the day before, or you may have to arrange a time. So that's still feasible. With these companies, it's kind of an on-demand option. Excuse me. So Jamie said, good to know Florida is covered by the expert. I just started putting that stuff together to offer that. I considered it a few months ago, and then I was like, oh, I need to slow down. I need to focus. Let's see. Can Florida MD do telemedicine by phone? Yes. Florida, you can do telemedicine by phone. You can. For weight loss too. And yeah, if you decide to add on weight loss, then of course that's going to be a different good faith exam, by the way, unless you're going to do a good faith exam for weight loss and IV therapy, all at once. And that's possible. You could do that. Let's see. Does the good faith exam provide us with a personalized order? So they would have to. Yeah, they would have to be taking that on. Now, the thing is, in some states, you can do operating on your standing orders and then do the good faith exam to establish their appropriateness and clear them, right? That's kind of what I call it. Look at it like a clearance. It's just Arizona that came out with like, no, this order needs to be personalized, okay? So in some states, you can get with standing orders and a good faith exam. Arizona says, no thanks, we want personalized specific orders. But yeah, and that's the thing. This is the kind of questions when you're interviewing these companies. This is why you need the knowledge and the information, because you're interviewing them and you need to make sure that they also understand what is required to be compliant, because unfortunately some of these companies are popping up out of nowhere and growing really quickly, and they're not always in compliance with what is required by that state. So that is a very important thing to ask them, like, hey, this is what my state requires. Is this what you do? So very good point. Let's see. All right, so I think I stayed decently on time. Okay, not too bad. So this is the same slide from last night. Those of you who purchased the toolkit, when you purchase that toolkit, as you see, it gives you a confirmation. Once I see it, I take the email and then I give you the access. So if you purchase it in the middle of the night, just know that when I wake up, I'll do it. Otherwise, I check it during the day and give you. So I do have to manually go in and give you access. So just bear with me a little, but I will do it. If you don't see it within 24 hours, definitely say, hey, I purchased a toolkit. Where's my access? Those of you who were here last night know that Post-Op Recovery Bootcamp is coming up in February. It's virtual. That is the 2-day weekend, Post-Op Recovery, IV Therapy. Day 1 is post-op, day 2 is IV therapy. That is the entire weekend. And there's a code for $250 off, okay? So we talked about that last night. That will end tonight. So shout out, awesome. Congrats to those who have enrolled for February. All you have to do to lock in that $250 off is just pay the deposit. You will pay the remaining balance 2 weeks prior in February, okay? But that holds your seat and that holds that price. And remember that the full IV therapy bootcamp will be offered this weekend, Saturday, and then also on 11/11. So that is $200 off until midnight tonight. It will end and then the price will change, but the typical price is $745. So right now it's $545. And yes, it is the full class with the full toolkit. So I call it one of those like can't refuse offers or no-brainer offers. It's a great offer. So, and then you already have this as a jump start. So if you're ready, and if you've been thinking about this a while, IV Therapy Bootcamp is coming right up. Let's see. I want to clarify that a physician and collaborative agreement is needed for good faith exam. Yeah, so you could have your collaborative physician do the good faith exam, or you could have a collaborative physician. You go through the process, you have your agreement with them for your oversight, but you may also still have another provider who does your good faith exams, but that will still require yet another agreement. So yes. That's why the toolkit keeps growing. And these are all templates, y'all. This is like a starting point. Keep that in mind. Yes, with Post-Op Recovery Bootcamp, you can just do one day or the other day. One day, day 1 is $745. 2 days is $14.95, but the $250 off. Don't ask me to do the math on that. So let me show y'all, just like I did last night, because I know some people weren't here last night. I'm just going to show you. So see that bit.ly/bootcamp nurse? That is all lowercase. That will take you to bootcamp. Or you can just go to my website, which is here. My main website is adaptivewellness.com, and just click on, and my adaptive wellness, adaptive has no E, but click on training boot camps, and that will put you right there to learn more and read all about boot camps, the agendas, and then you can scroll down and you will be able to secure your spot. If you're going to use the $250 off though, be sure to use the deposit option, okay? That's where you can use that code. This one is the afterpay or pay in full. So use deposit option, and that's where the $250 off code will work for boot camp. Keep in mind that the $250 off is for 2 days, okay? 2-day attendance. So that's what that is for. And then otherwise, if you're looking for the toolkit or you're wanting to attend the upcoming virtual IV therapy boot camps this weekend and then 11/11, you can actually do those. I think I put a link right here. It's this one. You can still use this one that has IV therapy. Yeah, post-op or IV therapy. Okay, so that's where those are. $250 off for the February boot camp. Use deposit option. And you also can get the toolkit that people are talking about. You can also get that right here. When you click the bootcamp IV therapy or afterpay option, it will take you to this link, and there is an outline of what is in that toolkit. I put it there because I know, of course, you would want to know. So that's there too. So that's yeah, my main website, adaptivewellness.com, will take you to that. And otherwise, I mentioned this last night, but I do VIP days as well. So those though, you would email me, info@conciergenurselife.com. Now, y'all got that? Let me make sure there's no questions because that was a lot. And I'll send an email kind of summarizing that. There is not a separate toolkit for post-op, but I guess that could be something that comes up. Let me work on that, but there's not yet. Up until now, there was never a separate one for IV therapy either, but it has grown so big and so resourceful that I realized that it was very valuable just to stand on its own. Not to say that the post-op one isn't either, but I hadn't separated that one yet. Okay, let me see if I can see this question. What if during a good faith exam, the patient wants one thing, Myers, but on the next they want beauty? So remember, you're clearing them for IV therapy in general, so that should be fine. What would happen is if they came in and wanted, I would clear them for a good faith exam for IV therapy and the vitamin injections. That's what I would want to clear them for. But if they came in and they suddenly wanted, another service, say you offered medical weight loss, that would be another good faith exam. So that's what I mean when I say like something different. Let's see. But great question. And great question about post-op. Let me talk about, because someone sent me, so I mentioned Arizona. I kind of summarized those really quickly. The Arizona basically says that it is in the RN scope to mix the medication, start the IV, monitor, et cetera, et cetera. It says that an LPN cannot mix, but they can start an IV. So they really break down everybody's scope. It's right here. An LPN may assist and or participate in the performance and IV medicine administration as ordered by a licensed professional under the supervision of an RN or a license. So an RN can delegate the IV therapy as long as they're there on site, or the nurse practitioner, to an LPN in Arizona. Okay, keep in mind, you need to be there. A nurse practitioner can delegate to an RN, but an RN doesn't require the direct supervision. So as I read through this, I think it tells you like this, you can't ask for better. It tells you exactly what's needed. Now with Massachusetts, I started reading through that. Honestly, I didn't think theirs was bad either. Someone asked me kind of what I thought about it. And my thought is that it tells you, let's see, clinical decisions related to infusion therapy practice. Let's see, sure. It tells you like RN's practice. So it says RN practice may include, and it talks about ultrasound, intraosseous device insertion, monitoring, maintenance of the infusion site, infusion of a solution where medication is compounded, prepared, mixed, labeled in a pharmacy or obtained from a 503B. Like they spell it out. And so I think this is great. I think this tells you exactly what's in your scope, and that IV therapy and using the vitamin therapy is in your scope as an RN. So And then they go on to separate out LPN practice as well. I think the biggest thing with them, let's see, infusion. They can do the infusion too. So I'm gonna have these for safety, and this is great. But hey, I think that they didn't take anything away. They actually reinforced that it was in your scope. Let's see. What do you foresee for the future with some states not allowing? I don't think that that's going to be every single state. Some, like, just like this Massachusetts, this is an advisory, and they're like, yes, this is in your scope as an RN, this is in your scope as an LPN. So every advisory that comes out does not equal is taking something away. They're reinforcing that this is in your scope. Arizona reinforcing, yes, this is in the nursing scope. So advisories are great. Now, do I think that every state's going to suddenly decide? Which is really crazy, because we know that we mix in the hospital. We even know that sometimes even other disciplines are authorized to mix, not in IV therapy, but mix IV bags and compound, right? So I don't see that happening in every state. But will a lot of states kind of make an advisory or reinforce a position? Yeah, but that's a good thing. Even if they were to come out and say that, okay, I can tell you there's going to be someone that's going to step up to the plate and solve a problem, because there's still going to be clinics out here with nurses who need to provide IV therapy. Someone is going to step up. There's someone even mentioned last night, they already found a pharmacy in their state. It's a private local pharmacy, and they can mix their bags for them. Is there an additional cost? Yes, but remember, you filter all that into your cost of doing business, and that's what determines your pricing. Let's see. Does anyone know if an RN can open a concierge practice in California? You can, in most states, you can start your concierge business. That's why I love the concierge model, the private care model. You can do this, right? But the key is, in most states, when you start to add on a team, nurses, or you're contracting or you're employing other nurses for your concierge care, home care, now you need a home care license. But starting on your own, now one state that threw a couple of us for a loop, and you, even just for you to do home care services requires a home care license, was North Carolina. They require a class, they require a few extra things, right? But Florida, no. Most other states, no. So there's a lot of states where you can provide private duty, think private duty, and you don't need to have a home care license. So when you're researching this, look up required, like, private duty nursing in your state. Look up private, and keep in mind too, you're doing a cash pay service. So that's not going to be the same as like setting up to accept insurances. Insurances, home care, that's automatically like a license, right? But private duty, cash pay, concierge care, provided by you to start, which is how most of us start. That's how I started. Does not require in most states, does not require a home care license. Growing a team, adding on contractors, yes. And my take on that is, that's one way that Bootcamp is changing. The post-op part of Bootcamp is going to be more focused. Even this content is also part of post-op day too. So the same thing with post-op. This part, these legal foundations, will not be in the Bootcamp, because I want to change it to focus more on that, like the home care license. I say once you start, even when you start private care concierge, to grow and expand your team, that's always going to be the goal, to not always work in your business, but also create opportunities for others. So my whole goal now is to help you go toward eventually the home care license, So that is a change that is coming up, because it's amazing. Like, you should. One thing that is immune to recessions and the economy is going to be home care. People are still having surgery, y'all, and we are still doing post-op for sure. Let's see. Even infusion nurses who provide care to patients when discharged from the hospital, antibiotic therapies, they are mixing. Exactly. That's why I said some of these states trying to just go and say a nurse can't do that, it would be very difficult. And even the ones that have made that statement is more of a position statement. It's not a law, so to say. But I know that for a lot of people, it's scary. So they're like, let's just prepare. Let's see. We are opening a home care agency. So I already knew it was going to be some more crazy stuff. Yeah, but that's awesome. Let me tell you something. That's a good route to go, though. Like, you can't go wrong doing private concierge and then even expanding into home care agency. I highly recommend it. One question, can EMS give infusion in Tennessee? A paramedic. So their scope of practice could be that they could start and they could possibly hang saline or LR, but that does not mean that they can mix into the bag and monitor a vitamin infusion. So you would have to check their scope of practice and also be sure that that can be delegated to them. I know in most states they can't. You would have to be there. So they can start it, but you're still going to be mixing. And can RN give without doctor? So yes, in the RN, you would have a medical director, you would have your standing orders, you would have your good faith exam, but the doctor does not have to be on site in Tennessee. Let's see. And I just randomly know Tennessee. I don't know other states like that. It's just Tennessee and Florida. Let's see. When you build a team, are they typically 1099 or W-2? For post-op, my team is 1099. For IV therapy, I still really do my drips. So in that case, keep in mind with like 1099 or W-2 has to do with your oversight, your how much direction you provide. Are you providing the supply? So there's rules for independent contractor versus employee, and these are federal level, like IRS rules, right? And again, guess what? This is where a tax professional and an attorney are priceless, because you want to be sure that as you're growing your team, that they fit the definition of an independent contractor or a W-2 employee, and that you're classifying your employees correctly. But for post-op, 1099, they're contractors. They provide their own supplies. They don't have to be at work they don't have to be at work. I don't say I need you here on Monday at 8 a.m. That would be an employee. So good question. What types of infusions would work in postpartum? So I've done a lot of research. Postpartum is actually more complicated than pregnancy. So I typically just stick with like B vitamins, vitamin C, postpartum vitamins. I use an app called Hippocrates, and that's how I search those ingredients. I typically keep the drips, like I'm aiming for fluids and B vitamins, maybe vitamin C. But yeah, postpartum breastfeeding, I should say, is a little more complicated. I at first wouldn't even do pregnancy drips. If you're going to do them, definitely, educate, good faith exam, waiver. But even now that I do them occasionally, it's mainly I focus on fluids. That's my biggest thing, and maybe B vitamins. Even the infusion nurse. Oh yeah, we talked about that. So RN can do for good faith exam. So no, remember the good faith exam is establishing the provider patient. So it needs to be provider being someone who is licensed to practice medicine. So that needs to be an MD or a DO or nurse practitioner or a PA. So RN can't do a good faith exam. Can you do the physical assessment? Yes. But good faith exam, establishing that provider patient relationship, informed consent, review of medical history, and basically providing the go-ahead for that service, an RN cannot do that. And recommendations on resources for senior care concierge. So come to Bootcamp. But resources, I would say a good person to follow, especially if you have Instagram. Her name is Linda. She's even inside of the Concierge Nurse Network. Elite Concierge Nurses Nursing Naples. She's a good person to follow for senior care, but I actually need to finish this process. But I've invited her to be a boot camp speaker. I mentioned it to her, so if she hears that, she's gonna be like, oh yeah, so is that happening? Yes. But post-op recovery boot camp day 1 post-op also includes senior care. So her name is Linda. Wait, let me look on Instagram, because she's going to be unofficially official to her, an instructor for senior care next year for post-op recovery boot camp. So we've added in senior care as well. So elite Okay, Elite Concierge Nurse Naples. And it's an underscore. It's like elite underscore concierge underscore nurse underscore Naples. But Linda, I don't want to mess up her last name, but go through her website and her Instagram. She is rocking it out doing high ticket senior care, by the way. So I want her to join boot camp so that she can share her expertise, because she started last fall and she has exploded. Any plans to include postpartum? Oh, y'all. Now, see, that is extensive. So remember, we do have an on-demand postpartum concierge course, by the way. And is the reason that one's not like live is because the nurse expert that I partnered with for that class, her schedule is very intense. So we decided to do that class as a on demand, so we could record it once, versus how I do boot camp and I do multiple events. So the postpartum concierge class, and it has its own full toolkit as well, is inside of, let me show y'all where that's at. Let's see. It's on the Concierge Nurse Network. I think I'm going to put all these links in the email to y'all, so y'all can so don't get overwhelmed with the email links, but that's why, because there's a few different places to go for courses. So that's where the on-demand courses are, y'all. And the postpartum concierge is right here. Start your postpartum concierge. The expert that I did that with, her name is TJ. She's based in Jacksonville, and she's had her postpartum concierge since 2020. So that's that class. But no, that one's not in conjunction with boot camp. Post-op and senior care is together, but the postpartum concierge, as you can see, is its whole separate own course. So, and all courses now, with like risk management module, you see, I talk about risk management in boot camp as well. All right. So I appreciate all of y'all's feedback. Everybody was, some of you that had to jump off, be back tomorrow. Yay, come back tomorrow, y'all. Come back tomorrow. Thank you all for hanging in there. Let me stop the share. I hope I answered all your questions. And one more night, I will see you all